in the midst of my own personal endeavors throughout my life, it's hard to see that in the moment. We lose sight.
Yes.
Sometimes it seems really dark. Oftentimes we'll feel alone, desperate sometimes, right? All of these different emotions surface. And so I want to be the light. I want to be the light
Sure.
on the path because
Yeah.
I've had a lot of dark days and I've healed, and healing is not a one and done. It's a continuous evolving journey.
Just Living podcast. That's if you're here for the first time. And if you're joining us, welcome back. Of course, this is a podcast that's committed to empowering you to live your best audacious life ever. Your presence here is truly valued, and I'm grateful for you joining us. Now, life resembles a roller coaster ride, with its highs and its lows. At times, hitting rock bottom becomes a catalyst for significant changes, propelling us to ascend to the peaks of success once more. Marcy Langlois' journey is a testament to this truth, demonstrating how confronting adversity can offer and foster transformative growth and resilience. She's a renowned coach and speaker who specializes in trauma healing and personal development, leveraging over 2 decades of experience to help individuals turn their struggles into sources of purpose and meaning. Now, in this episode, Marcy shares her remarkable story of triumph over trauma, which includes addiction and chronic illness, to craft a fulfilling life. Her experiences serve as a poignant illustration of resiliency and the profound impact of surrender and self-discovery. So now that we've got you all set, let's turn to our conversation with Marcy. Enjoy. Hey, Marcy, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living podcast. I appreciate you taking the time to be here, so thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. What an incredible honor to be with you this morning.
Well, I continually say often and always how appreciative I am of individuals wanting to come and spend some time. First of all, touching on some really important topics, first and foremost, but also looking to use whether it be their experiences and knowledge and insights to in the benefit of others. And so that part's always been really, really exciting to me, the ability to share what we've experienced or know. And so I'm happy to do them. Here on this podcast, we do encourage individuals and different ways they can live their best audacious life. As we talk about, the sometimes it happens. There's things that come along our pathway, or maybe there's things that we need to deal with that are preventing us or getting in the way of us being able to do so. And so we have to be equipped and be able to manage that piece of life, because that really is a function of life challenges, adversity, obstacles. We our resiliency will be tested, there's no question. And so I think this is an excellent opportunity for you to talk about the work that you do around trauma and healing, and again, addiction recovery is also an aspect that you discuss on. So maybe as a starting point, we can get our listeners, you can fill our listeners in a little about you and the work that you do, and what's brought you to the point that we're at now.
Yeah. Thank you. I love your passion for just helping people
Thank you.
push through and live their best life, right? That's really my mission too. Is that living is going to always encompass suffering, right? That's part of living. But what I found is that there's a way to transform our suffering into purpose and meaning. And in the midst of my own personal endeavors throughout my life, it's hard to see that in the moment. We lose sight.
Yes.
Sometimes it seems really dark. Oftentimes we'll feel alone, desperate sometimes, right? All of these different emotions surface. And so I want to be the light. I want to be the light
Sure.
on the path because
Yeah.
I've had a lot of dark days and I've healed, and healing is not a one and done. It's a continuous evolving journey. But today, what I try to remember is what I'm here for. And for me, I believe that's to live our best life as the most evolved human I can be.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. I absolutely love it. I mean, I feel like we can start all sorts of different places. Maybe to start the childhood, because oftentimes childhood trauma and the things that happen to us when we're young oftentimes follow us as adults, and in some instances we can pinpoint and know exactly what that thing was, and others it's a bit more hidden and not as obvious, and there's some work to unroot or dig it up. So maybe that's we can start there.
Sure, sure. So my childhood was full of trauma, really. From the day that I was born with a cleft lip and palate.
Okay.
And for people that don't know exactly what that is when your lip doesn't form all the way across and you have no roof of your mouth. And so you can also have lots of other medical issues going on. Your heart, your digestive system, everything really can be a problem. So the first 7 days of my life, I spent at the university hospital, and they were just trying to figure out, is there other issues that this baby is experiencing? And so I went through a number of medical tests and all of those things. And that really set me up for everything else that came next in
Okay.
my life, because our nervous system is wired in the first 90 days that we're alive. And it's
Mm,
wired for either safety or fear. And so, with the first 7 days of my life being in a hospital setting with all this testing going on, my nervous system was definitely wired for fear. And then, in addition to that, I had my first surgery when I was 3 months old. Um, and that began the first of many, many surgeries. I've had over like 20 surgical procedures, the last one ending when I was 18 years old. In addition to all of that, I came from very little. At times, we had no running water and no electricity.
right.
My dad was active in addiction, and things were difficult everywhere in my life, really.
Hmm. And it would seem when you start off as in that fashion, the way that you did, like you've come to the world facing adversity. It becomes all you know, and it also impacts how you view the world. Like you essentially, so you're growing with this now, and you're thinking, hey, I just gotta fight and to figure my way things out because that's what life is, and it can really skew your perception of what living is about.
150%.
Hmm.
Yes, that's exactly right. And so everything I did was based on fear and lack and
Hmm.
scarcity. I never had enough of anything in my life, is the way that I perceived everything.
Right.
And so that speaks to exactly what you just said. Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
And so the natural step, right? You think, okay, so how does one get out of that? But in order to get out of that, they've got to have to see what it looks like, right? And that's so you now have to think beyond yourself, because if you stay within yourself and what you know is what you'll ever see. How
Right.
important is it to kind of get those outside, whether it be resources or supports or the necessary aid to get you out of that zone, if you will?
Yeah, it's so important. See, the part that I didn't tell you is that when I was 17 and all of this medical stuff was coming to a close, and I look the way I look today instead of the way I looked when I was born. And so
Mhm.
I had more confidence and felt better about moving through the world. And I was ready to go to college, and I got in a car accident
Okay,
on my
wow.
way to my after school job.
Wow.
And at that time in that car accident, I hit that person. They pulled out in front of me, and I could not stop. And all of the passengers in his car passed away.
Mm.
And so that it's still really tender for me to talk about that. Um, so that was sort of like the end point of me, right?
Understood.
Of
Yeah.
everything I had been through, everything I had experienced up until that point, that was sort of like the cherry on top, right?
Mhm.
Like, oh my goodness. And I had started dabbling with drugs and alcohol at a young age, really
Mhm.
around 10, 11 years old.
Right.
And so then when this car accident happened, I really had no coping tools, no coping
Sure.
mechanism whatsoever. And so drugs and alcohol were the solution for me. And
Right.
so to go back and answer your question, how important is it to find support? It's
Mm.
so important because had I had other coping mechanisms in order to manage the trauma I had already experienced,
Yes.
if
Yes.
I had dealt with that prior to the car accident, there's a chance when the car accident happened, I could have just gotten the appropriate help that I needed. But instead, I just plummeted into addiction
Right.
and lived there for 10 years.
So essentially compounded what was already you were already dealing with essentially.
100%. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Mm. So first off, thank you for sharing. That's some, again, the things that we go through and the traumatic experiences aren't always easy. So no matter how much times we tell them, like they still can have an impact on us. And I think that's actually an important piece to recognize. Like the healing process doesn't mean forgetting, acting like it didn't happen. Like that's not part of it. I think a big part of the healing process is in fact acknowledging whether you were experiencing guilt or shame or whatever that emotion is or was, that you still need to be able to say, yeah, this is what took place. And now here's what I can do to move through that. So I wonder for you, what was the next steps and moving through that? What did that look like after? Again, I know you talked about the addiction for the additional 10 years that sort of widened that path for you, if you will. What happened after that?
Yeah. So after the 10 years or during
Mhm.
those 10 years?
Well, it sounds like, and if there's some, it sounds like there's a lot already happening during the 10 years in terms of just compounding. So I hear that, unless there was
Right.
something else that took place. I'm just wondering, was there something else? What did the after look like?
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying. It's Yeah, well, what else took place during those 10 years is I had been plagued by chronic illness my whole life. I really
Mm,
was never physically well. And when I was drinking, that was masking it. And so
right.
around at 27 years old, it occurred to me that I was doing to my daughter exactly what my father had done to me. And
Mm,
I was not willing to put another human being through that. And so I decided to quit drinking, and
okay.
I've never picked up a drink since then. That was 21 years ago. And I thought that was like I had arrived, you know. I did
Right.
think that healing had happened and it was over and I was moving on. But what happened was all the stuff that I had not dealt with and I had been pushing down and masking now just came out full fledged. And the chronic illness exploded. And I was having 15 panic attacks a day. I couldn't sleep. My body was 70% covered by psoriasis. And I was physically a hot mess. So, what did I do? Well, I went ahead and I switched addictions. I went from using drugs and alcohol to working. And I started
Mm,
getting my value and esteem from working. And I also got this way to keep masking, right? Even though I was going to therapy and doing all the things that they tell you to do, I was doing all of those things
right.
arduously, honestly. But I it was still too painful to be in my own skin.
Right, right, and that's a significant point in the masking, right? Like we think that so I we stop drinking, good, my problems are solved. But the undealt with trauma, I think I alluded off the top that sometimes people know it's there, and so they don't know it's there. The undealt stuff, the stuff undealt with, rather, it's still a big part or contributing to our lives. And for some, for some, they can identify it, and for others they can't. What helped you identify what that stuff was still there for you?
Yeah, lots and lots of therapy was a major driver for me.
Hmm.
But see, when I work with clients, this is what I hear all the time, right? Like, my childhood was okay. This, that, or the other. My parents did the best they can. Whatever, however they look at that. But what I had used and continue to use is, what does my life look like today? Whatever's going on in my life today is the indicating factor of what is underneath that, right? That's the symptom. And so And that's how I found it, right? I was angry. I was on the edge of my seat all the time.
Yep.
I never could find happiness. It always was eluding me. Um, I would think that if I could just get this, this, and this in line, then I would be happy.
Right.
Um, I never felt safe. Um, I never felt like anything was going to be okay. I was always waiting for the next thing to go wrong.
Got you. Got you. Um, Talk about the importance of hitting rock bottom. Um, for some people, that's the necessary ground floor that they have to hit to spark any kind of changes or significant changes. It's not blanket across the board. Like we're all different, right, in terms of where we need to be at. But for some, they have to actually like be at the bottom before they realize I need to change.
That's right. That was me. I had to be at the bottom. I wasn't willing to change until I hit the bottom. And I think that tends to be typical of what I hear.
Mm-hmm.
Pain is usually the motivator. And
Mm,
I think that's the beauty in the experience. It doesn't feel beautiful.
right,
It doesn't look beautiful, but
right.
that is the beauty in the experience is that the pain actually becomes our best friend. It becomes the motivator for us to actually go on and do what we're intended to do, right? Or
Hmm.
at least move towards that in some sort of meaningful way.
Right, right. Um, it's I think I'm sort of trying to find follow sort of logical pattern here as we move through this, and
Yeah.
I hope I'm on path still, right? But as we move
Yeah.
through that, yes, as we move to that point of healing, it's in that period that the things like purpose or love. Or even like that self-discovery piece, that's when that starts to unravel and become real to us. What I find interesting is that for you like for some the purpose was always there, the love was always there, but they just weren't accessing that and being able to bring that in their fulsome selves. Was that so? Does that mirror what you experienced? Or I know I'm speaking very general, but I'm just curious what yours looked like in relation to what I just described.
Yeah, so that's a really great question also, and great insight, honestly.
Thank you.
Um, I feel like when we're for me,
Hmm.
I was in such a place of desperation that when I stopped drinking, I couldn't I don't know how this happens with drinking, right? One day I cannot stop drinking and I drink all day long every
Right,
day.
right,
And the
right.
next day I something happens and when I wake up I no longer drink and now I haven't drank for 21 years. But I was so desperate to not drink and live
Hmm.
that life anymore
Hmm.
that all of this stuff opened up to me. It was like a whole new world literally unveiled itself to me. And then when I went to therapy within a couple of years of getting sober, then it was like all this, what you're talking about, this path of self discovery, right? And
Right.
I find one of the most like powerful techniques and one of the most incredible things that I got from therapy is naming what happened,
Okay.
right? For my whole life, it was like, oh, well, this is just the way it is. We don't have any running water because we can't afford it. But as a little kid, that's very unsettling to not have running water or
Sure. Yeah.
electricity, right?
Right. Right.
And
Right.
so it's like when I sit in therapy, I get to say not having running water made me feel really afraid, made me feel
Mm,
right. Like, and naming these things that happened when my dad drank and he was unpredictable, that made me feel afraid, right? Just naming what happened and being honest about that so that I don't have to live this lie or put on this show or facade was so helpful in my path of healing because There's no more sweeping it under the rug anymore. It's like,
Right.
here's all the cards. Let's just say what it is. And now we can move forward. Right now there's a different way we can see this and look at this.
Right, right. And that is so so important by having that perspective to be able to see it differently. As I said earlier, it helps uncover the stuff that was hidden, right? And
Yeah.
I think I think that's certainly a beautiful part of the process, no question in my mind. Um, and I'm sort of following that progression, the process of sharing. When we talk about sharing our struggles, I mean, I've always said as an example, one of the most empowering things that we can do for other people is share our stories. And I know when we talk about sharing our stories, there's the natural tendency to talk about all the wonderful and glamorous things that are happening for us, and that's fine.
Mhm.
But there's an aspect of this when we're sharing our or maybe our faults or our mistakes, or we're being vulnerable in a way that allows us to connect with others. There's just, again, I talk about powerful, there's a real power in that, because now you have the opportunity to impact people in profound ways, in ways that they never, like there's not, like, for me, when you are going through a challenge or a struggle or something difficult, it is so easy to feel and think that no one on the planet has any idea what you're going through, what you've been through, what it feels like, nothing. But then to have someone come along and say, well, hey, you know what? This was me, and here's how I did it, or here's what I had to do, or here's what I learned from it. The empowerment that comes from that is absolutely amazing. And so I'd love for you to talk about just how important it is to share our stories.
Yeah. You're a man after my own heart right there. It's what gets me out of bed in the morning.
Mm,
Um, I've shared my story for a number of years now in all different settings, really intimate settings where there was just like 5 or 10 people there,
yep.
and all the way up to thousands of people. And the
Mhm.
thing is that there is this power of authenticity and vulnerability that opens the door for everybody else to feel like, oh, okay. I thought no one had ever felt like this
Yeah.
before. I thought I was all alone, right? And the next thing you know, um, they're opening up in ways that they could have never ever imagined. And literally what I'm witnessing before myself is someone transforming right before me as they open up and they name it, they name their experience for what it was, and maybe they have feelings about it or whatever, but just them opening in that way, oh my gosh, if I never do another thing,
Mhm.
I feel like I've done my work, right? Like, it's so powerful because it was
Yeah.
so transformative for me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I do. That's the exciting part there, right there. And being able, again, the impact that you can have on people. It's just, I don't think there's enough words to properly describe how wonderful that is. So yeah, I'm with you loud
Yeah.
and clear. Um, uh, so there's a piece of the work that you do really is wrapped around the importance of resiliency, right? That's a huge part of what we're talking about here. We acknowledge that difficult times are going to come. I oftentimes use this analogy of life being like hills and valleys, right? So on the top of the hill, things are great, they're happy, we're find love, purpose, fulfillment, all those wonderful things are there. But as life goes, because it's a continuum, as we go, we're going to get to that valley, we're going to come down to that, the bottom, the icky place. It doesn't feel good. There might be pain, or it could trauma. There'll be things there that make our life difficult. And recognizing that life is a continuum, we also recognize that what we're experiencing or going through is part of the process, and our choice is to stay there and mull over how terrible things are, or find ways to build up to get to the top of the hill where we can celebrate and be happy again. I
Right.
wonder if you maybe could talk about some key things that individuals can do to build themselves back up to get back to that hill.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I had one more experience that I didn't mention that
Okay.
really is what has gotten me into my seat today.
Okay.
And that is in 2021, my body said no more. It's done. I'm not going to be able to work like a maniac anymore. And this chronic illness all came to a head, and my body literally shut down. And I was bedridden for 40 days. I had some really serious autoimmune conditions going on, mast cell activation syndrome and histamine
Mhm.
intolerance, which are life threatening. And I got it. In those 40 days, I got it. Laying in bed, I realized that surrender is probably the greatest gift that we can ever give ourselves. And I don't mean roll over and die surrender.
Right.
I mean give up and just say, okay, right? Like raise the white flag and
Right.
stop resisting. When
Mhm.
the body is telling you no more, it means no more, Marcy. You
Right.
just weren't listening, right? So surrender is one of these practices that I employ on a regular basis. It's in every area of my life, but it is the thing that makes me probably as resilient as I can possibly be. And
Mhm.
that is accept life on life's terms, right?
Mhm.
Literally. I don't have to like it. I don't have to love it. I don't even have to agree with it, but I have to not resist what is actually happening. Because as soon as I start resisting, that is what brings up all the suffering for me.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Right? When I'm just like, okay, Audley, I don't like that you're doing this. And I can see that you're hurting yourself by the choices you're making. But
Mhm.
I know as a separate person, I cannot tell you what to do. That's
Right.
going to make you be like, oh, okay, Marcy, I'm going to change everything because
Right.
you said I
Right.
should.
Right.
Right?
It's not
So,
realistic.
in,
No.
no. So instead of keeping myself up at night and worrying about you and your behaviors and your choices, I can just let go and say, he's going to do what he's going to do.
Yes.
And he knows I'm here and that I love him, care for him, and I want the best for him. And
Yep.
when he's ready, maybe we can have a different conversation. I mean, just that kind of behavior is
Yes.
so powerful.
Yeah, yeah, and it's such a small shift, right? It's just like I think the topic. I mean, I could there could be a whole separate podcast just on acceptance alone and what that can
Yes.
do for us in a major, again, I'll use the word profound way, because it also and it's funny. I'll think of my own life that every single time that I've decided just to let go, why fight it? Why build up myself and get myself worked up or invest emotionally or physically or whatever, like my brain power on something I have no control over? Let go. And I'm telling you, Marcy, every single time that I've done that, things have worked themselves out. And it just it's not. And you know the process of time can be such a wonderful thing because time has a way of healing so much, but we as individuals want it all now, and we want to, we got to fix it now, we got to do it now. But allow time to do its work, and you'll find that the stuff you were concerned with really wasn't that big of a deal in the end.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
The other thing that I use all the time is harnessing the power of my own mind.
Right.
So I don't know if we know how powerful our thoughts are, but I certainly did not. I read lots of books about it. I love reading about neuroscience and
Mhm.
neuroplasticity and all the things. And I was like, this is so amazing and so great and so cool and all the things. But then when it came to my life, I wasn't implementing it. So
Right.
when I got really, really sick, um, it became very evident to me whatever I was thinking my body was responding to.
Yep.
So the more worked up I would get about being bedridden, the worse the tremors in my brain would get. The more stressed out I got about whether or not I was ever going to be able to go back to work again, the worse the tremors in my brain would get. If I would just relax,
Yeah. Yeah.
focus on my breath, then the tremors would calm down by
Yeah.
like 50%. So it became very, very clear to me that literally what we think is what our body will
Yeah.
respond to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that creates
Yeah.
our whole reality.
It's
So
true.
I've
It's a
gone
trickle
on
effect, isn't it? Right? It just kind of goes, right?
yes, yes. It's endless and it's so powerful. And so
Yeah.
I've gone on to heal myself by using that technique.
Yeah.
Literally by using the power of my mind and regulating my nervous system is how I've healed my body.
Amazing, amazing. I oftentimes employ the power. I call the power of the slowdown. Just slow down. Just slow down. I tell myself to slow down when I feel it and my thoughts start. Just slow down. And I do the self talk too. I'll be openly. I'm a self talk guy. I talk myself out of all kinds of stuff. Sometimes I talk myself into things too, but I talk myself out. Right? It just happens. It goes both ways. But the point really though is that if we're able to ease that back just a little bit, and by slowing down, I find, and again, this is just what Audley Stephenson goes with. It gives me an opportunity to think and to calm and to almost go through a critical analysis process. And when I can do that, I'm in a better place. So that's what I do.
That's amazing. I use the same kind of techniques also because it's all starts with our physiology, right? Like our brain, when we're in fight or flight, our brain isn't working correctly.
Yep.
Right? The prefrontal cortex comes offline and we can't make decisions that are going to be beneficial for us. We're in fight or flight.
Yeah.
And so it's a whole thing that's happening biologically and chemically within our body. So calm, pause,
Yes.
peace,
Yes.
flow, all those things are life changing, literally.
Yeah. They totally are. They totally are. Marcy, this has been awesome, man. I really appreciate having here and the insights, and thank you for being vulnerable enough to share your story with our audience. And I think again we talked earlier about how impactful that can be, and important that is in helping others on their own healing journeys. And so, thank you for doing so. If you maybe could talk about the work that you do with individuals now, and how people can connect with you.
Yeah, thank you. This has been a wonderful conversation. Thank
Thank you.
you. Yeah, I have a coaching platform and I have different levels of coaching packages, how much you'd like to work with me or not. If you're a lone ranger, I have things that I can put in place for you and you can do it yourself, or I can coach you through the work, however you would like to do that. But you'll be able to find all of that in the show notes of how you can connect with me there. And then I'm on TikTok and YouTube and Facebook, all the social media platforms, and I'm just constantly trying to give free information and tips and tricks and tools on how to live your best life and live beyond any limit you're experiencing.
Amazing, amazing. Marcy, this has been great. Thank you for the time. Congratulations on the great work, and on all the best.
Oh, thank you. Same to you, Audley.
Back right here on the podcast. Now, Marcy's narrative underscores the significance of surrender and the mind's healing power. Through embracing acceptance and in harnessing the potency of positive thinking, Marcy was able to transcend her limitations and embark on a healing journey. Now, if Marcy's journey has inspired you and you wish to explore her coaching services further, please refer to the show notes below for all the contact information and ways to connect with her directly. Thank you so much for being a part of the Audacious Living Podcast. Remember, your audacious life is definitely attainable, and by embracing acceptance and tapping into the power of your mind, you can surmount any hurdle. Please support us by liking, following, and sharing to aid our podcast growth if you haven't already done so, and allows us to continue to inspire listeners to pursue their best lives. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.